Welcome to today's Explainer. Usually we'd kick things off with a structured agenda, but today we're just going to skip right past that. We are diving straight into something fascinating and honestly, surprisingly emotional. We're looking at this brilliantly written piece from Digital Thoughts that unpacks something we've all felt, but probably never really put into words. What exactly happens when the famous faces we grew up with, our absolute musical heroes, start to grow old? The songs never changed, but somewhere along the way, we did. Just think about how genuinely jarring it feels to see our childhood heroes aging. You're scrolling online, or maybe you're watching a concert, and suddenly, bam, it just hits you. It's this strange, super personal feeling. And what the source material points out here is that watching these cultural icons age actually acts as this quiet little mirror for our own passing years. What's really fascinating here is the specific event that actually sparked this whole reflection. The author describes watching a recent performance by rock legend Rod Stewart. He's 82 years old, right? And there was this moment that literally stopped the writer in their tracks. He had to pause to take oxygen on stage before carrying on. But here's the absolute kicker. The crowd didn't meet this moment with pity or, sympathy. Not at all. It was met with deep admiration. They were witnessing this incredibly honest moment of a guy who has spent over 60 years doing what he loves, just flat out refusing to let age have the final word. So we really have to stop and ask ourselves, why does seeing our heroes age feel so incredibly startling? Why does it feel so deeply personal to us? Especially when, let's be real, most of us have never actually met these people. The author captures this perfectly. They compare it to finding a dusty old family photograph. It's like looking at a picture where someone you firmly believed would stay, say, 40 years old forever, has somehow seemingly aged to 80 overnight. And this brilliantly illustrates why that happens. Our memory, well, it quietly edits reality into something just a bit easier to carry. The truth is, we never really watch these icons grow older in real time, do we? Our selective memory basically freezes them right in their prime. In our heads, Bruce Springsteen is forever sprinting across a stadium stage in a sleeveless shirt. Debbie Harry is forever leaning into a mic with that absolutely effortless 1970s cool. Elton John is forever behind some outrageous piano. Time keeps moving for them, obviously, but not inside our memories. This comparison exposes the really peculiar trap of music. Over on one side, you've got the 1973 record. You can pull out a vinyl from half a century ago, drop the needle, and it sounds exactly as it did back then. The guitars aren't tired, the singer's voice hasn't aged a single day. It is trapped forever in this perfect moment of youth. But then, on the other side, there's the listener. That's us. We are the ones actually experiencing the passage of time. The record itself doesn't grow old. Only we do. So when we look at the artist today, we're essentially comparing two versions of ourselves separated by literal lifetimes. Zooming out to the macro view for a second, we can really track how this maps onto our own lives. Long before we had smartphones documenting our every waking move, musicians were quietly acting as our landmarks. Think about it. We don't usually organize our memories by exact calendar dates. We organize them by songs. Every album becomes a chapter marker for our own distinct life stages. You've got a soundtrack for your school years, another for when you first left home, one for becoming a parent, and another for your later years. Because of that, these artists carry just an immense, truly extraordinary burden of nostalgia. They aren't just entertainers to us. They've become the custodians of our most formative, intensely personal memories. When someone goes up to meet Paul McCartney, they aren't just shaking hands with a man. They are coming face to face with their first slow dance, their first heartbreak, that Sunday morning record their dad used to play in the kitchen. They are meeting the literal soundtrack to their youth. How could anyone possibly live up to that kind of pressure? This perfectly explains why aging celebrities might sometimes seem a little uncomfortable with all that nostalgia. As the author so accurately notes, they're asking them to recreate a feeling from 40 years ago. An impossible request. The audience isn't just showing up asking for a good concert. They're essentially asking to feel exactly the way they felt back in 1980. But time doesn't work backwards, guys, and neither do people. Which brings us to our first main section, older versus smaller. We're going to completely reframe the inevitable here. 0. That is the exact amount of effort it takes for youth to arrive. It just happens automatically. You don't have to do a thing. Yet, ironically, our society spends billions upon billions of dollars on anti-aging creams, massive advertising campaigns, and entire industries completely designed to disguise the inevitable passing of time. We're literally trying to buy back something that required absolutely zero effort to begin with. Crazy, right? So the really crucial difference we need to focus on is this. On one hand, we have growing older, which, let's face it, is completely inevitable for all of us. But on the other hand, we have growing smaller, which is entirely a choice. Growing smaller means you're becoming cautious, you're shrinking your life down, and you're hiding from time. The people we should admire the absolute most aren't the ones who just manage to look younger than they actually are. No, they're the ones who allow themselves to grow older without ever becoming smaller. People where the lines on their faces don't diminish them, but just become a beautiful part of their story. As the source material beautifully puts it, these are lives fully lived, not preserved in amber. Think about when audiences pack out massive football stadiums to watch performers who are well into their 70s and 80s. They aren't there chasing some impossible dream of seeing yesterday return. Not at all. They are there celebrating people whose lives are not just frozen in their youth, but are still bravely, loudly unfolding right there under the bright lights. Moving right along to our next section, the masterclass in endurance and surviving time. Just consider the stark contrast here. Culturally, we spend so much energy obsessing over this idea of eternal youth, which, as we just established, arrives totally automatically. But in doing that, we completely forget to celebrate endurance. And endurance, that takes practice. It takes immense persistence. According to the author, achieving that kind of endurance is a much harder and, frankly, far rarer achievement than eternal youth could ever possibly be. In practice, endurance is defined pretty simply. It's refusing to stop caring. Whether that's Rod Stewart throwing his voice into a song he wrote decades ago, or Bruce Springsteen pouring every single ounce of his physical energy into a grueling 3-hour show, or Elton John completely outgrowing the need to prove himself to anyone. Watching these legends today isn't some sad reminder of decline. It is an absolute masterclass in persistence and survival. Ultimately, this whole realization, it isn't just about famous rock stars at all. It's about us. As the explainer points out, we think we're traveling through time, but in truth, time is traveling through us. It leaves these tiny fingerprints everywhere, in our old photos, in our conversations, in the empty chairs around our holiday tables, and in those classic songs we still know every single word to. It's that quiet, kind of beautiful ache of realizing that time moves, even while we aren't looking. But, and the explainer makes a great point here, there is something deeply comforting about this perspective. Every version of yourself still belongs to you. Aging isn't some terrible sign that life went wrong. It's just evidence that life actually happened. The awkward teenager you once were, the super optimistic 20-year-old, the exhausted new parent, and the exact person you are today, none of those versions have disappeared. They're all just traveling together. I'm going to leave you with this final thought to reflect on as you step onto your own stage. The absolute greatest privilege isn't staying young. It's growing old and discovering that despite whatever time takes away, it leaves us with what matters most. So ask yourself, when someone looks back at your life, will they remember how old you became or the song you left playing after you'd gone?